ladies and gentlemen. The way you speak to yourself becomes the way you see yourself, and the way you see yourself becomes the way you live your life. It's not just a string of thoughts passing through your mind, it's the soil where your identity grows or withers. You might not even notice it happening because self-talk is so subtle, so woven into the daily fabric of your mind that it almost feels invisible. But invisible doesn't mean inactive. Your self-talk is either watering seeds of confidence or feeding the weeds of insecurity, and before you know it, what was just a thought becomes a belief. What was just a sentence becomes a sentence you live under. That's how powerful it is. There's a difference between a storm around you and a storm within you. One can pass, the other has the potential to keep you bound even when the sun is shining. And that storm within you often begins with unchecked words whispered in your own voice, quiet lies that pretend to protect you but are actually blocking you from becoming. It might sound like, "Don't try that again, you'll fail," or "You're not strong enough," or "Nobody really sees you." And what makes it so tricky is that it doesn't sound foreign, it sounds familiar. It sounds like you, but it's not the you that's aligned with truth. It's the echo of past pain, rejection, fear, and disappointment dressing up as wisdom. Self-talk is where the war for peace and confidence is either won or lost. We're taught to guard our hearts from others, but how often do we guard our hearts from ourselves? We're so quick to give grace to other people, to remind them of their worth, to tell them, "You got this," to say, "Don't be so hard on yourself." But when it comes to us, we become harsh critics, relentless judges, always rehearsing where we fall short, never pausing to acknowledge how far we've come. That double standard, it creates a gap between who you are and who you're becoming, a gap that peace can't cross, a gap that confidence falls into before it ever gets a chance to grow. You want to know why so many people don't feel at peace even when their lives look put together from the outside? Because their internal dialogue is loud with fear and silent with faith. Because they've built routines but not rest. Because they've learned how to keep moving forward but haven't learned how to speak kindly to themselves when they fall. Peace isn't about having a perfect life. It's about having a voice inside of you that says, even if everything's not perfect, I'm still okay. I'm still grounded. I'm still growing. And that voice has to be trained. It doesn't just show up one day. You have to feed it, nurture it, choose it over and over again, even when your emotions don't match. Especially when your emotions don't match. The reason this matters so deeply is because confidence doesn't grow in chaos. It grows in consistency. It grows in the quiet, in those everyday moments when you catch yourself spiraling and you choose to stop and say, "Wait, no, that's not true." That's when the roots go deep. It's not about becoming someone who never doubts. It's about becoming someone who no longer lets doubt do the talking. And that starts with awareness. Becoming aware of what you're saying to yourself without realizing it. Catching those automatic thoughts and challenging them, not with fantasy, but with faith. Faith doesn't mean denying reality. It means refusing to make your reality your identity. So yes, maybe you did fail. Maybe you did make mistakes. Maybe you did mess up. But that's not all you are. That's not the end of your story. And unless you start saying that to yourself, you'll stay stuck in a cycle of self-judgment while the world keeps spinning. You'll miss moments of grace because you've become so used to expecting judgment. You'll hold back when you were meant to rise up. There's a lie that says you have to wait until you feel better about yourself before you start speaking better to yourself. But it's actually the other way around. You speak better to yourself until you start to feel better. You tell yourself the truth until the truth feels more real than the fear. You remind yourself of your worth until your soul believes it again. You say, I am not a mistake. I am still becoming. I am learning how to be kind to myself, even if that voice shakes, even if your eyes are filled with tears, even if your heart is breaking, because that act of speaking life is not just healing, it's holy, it's sacred, it's reclaiming your identity, one word at a time. And let's be honest, there are so many voices competing for space in your mind already. Social media, culture, childhood wounds, religious trauma, perfectionism, comparison, all of them want a seat at the table. And if you don't learn how to be the loudest voice of truth in your own life, one of those other voices will take the mic. They'll narrate your life in a way that keeps you small. They'll convince you to question what God has already confirmed. And the most dangerous part, you'll think it's just being realistic, but peace is not born from realism. It's born from revelation. It's born from knowing who you are beyond what you've done. It's born from speaking what's true, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. You can't silence every storm outside of you, but you can silence the one within, not by ignoring it, not by pretending everything's fine, but by choosing to rewrite the narrative. To say, I'm still here, I still have value, I still have purpose. And if you have to say it every single day until it finally sticks, that's okay. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's the real work. That's where peace and confidence begin to take root. Because peace is not the absence of struggle, it's the presence of self-compassion in the middle of the struggle. And confidence is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward with love. Anyway, love for yourself, love for your growth, love for your process, love for the divine fingerprints on your soul that no mistake can ever erase. So before you seek peace out there, before you chase validation from people who can't see your full heart, before you try to build confidence through achievements or applause, start here. Start with what you say when you look in the mirror. Start with what you whisper when nobody else can hear. Start with that first thought in the morning and that final thought before sleep. Start with your self-talk, because that's where everything else begins. Your spirit is always absorbing, so when you speak life, something inside you starts to believe it. And maybe at first, it's just a flicker, a tiny flicker of hope, like a spark in a dark room. But that spark is holy. That spark is the beginning of fire. And when you speak those affirmations over and over again, you're breathing life into that fire. You're fanning the flame. You're saying, I will not stay in the shadows of my own story. I will not keep dimming my light just to make others comfortable. I am allowed to shine. I am allowed to rise. What you say to yourself becomes what you believe about yourself. And what you believe about yourself becomes how you show up in the world. So if your inner dialogue is constantly rehearsing inadequacy, you'll move through life apologizing for your existence. But if your inner dialogue starts to reflect your true worth, your divine design, your unshakable value, then you show up differently. You walk into rooms with your shoulders back and your head high. You make decisions from a place of groundedness, not desperation. You stop begging for what you already carry. The affirmations you choose to speak are also a reflection of your healing. It takes courage to say, I am loved, when all you've known is abandonment. It takes boldness to say, I am safe, when anxiety has been your companion. It takes faith to say, I am healed, when you still feel broken. But these declarations aren't denying your pain. They're confronting it. They're standing in the middle of the storm and speaking peace anyway. That's the real power, not pretending the storm isn't real, but choosing to anchor yourself in truth so the storm doesn't carry you away. Sometimes healing doesn't look like loud victories or sudden transformation. Sometimes healing looks like whispering the same affirmation to yourself every single day until it finally starts to feel true. I am not too much. I belong. I don't have to earn love. I can rest. These small statements begin to rewire your thinking. They slowly shift your emotional baseline, and over time, they begin to soften the hard places inside of you. Because those hard places, those defenses, those walls, those shutdowns, they were built to protect you. But now you're safe enough to release them. Now you're strong enough to tell yourself the truth. Affirmations also become a mirror. They show you where you've been silent for too long. When you struggle to say, I am beautiful, it reveals how much shame still lingers. When I am worthy of love feels like a lie, it shows you where the wound is still open. But instead of seeing that as weakness, you can see it as invitation. An invitation to sit with that part of yourself and speak truth to her anyway. To remind her that just because she was overlooked doesn't mean she's invisible. Just because she was criticized doesn't mean she's flawed. Just because she was abandoned doesn't mean she's unlovable. You get to reparent your spirit with your words. You get to become the voice you needed when you were hurting. And the beautiful thing is that your words don't have to be loud to be powerful. They just have to be true. You don't have to scream, I am enough. You can whisper it with trembling lips, and heaven will still hear it. Your body will still respond. Your spirit will still rise, because even the quietest truth has the authority to heal when it's spoken in love. There will be days when you won't feel like affirming anything, when the weight of life feels heavier than the words you're trying to speak. But those are the days you need them the most. Not because the words will change everything overnight, but because they'll change you. They'll center you, ground you, call you back to yourself. And on those days, don't look for perfection, just look for presence. Be present with yourself. Speak gently. Speak honestly. Speak even if your voice shakes. The affirmations you speak today become the roots of the confidence you walk in tomorrow. They are not fluff. They are not fluff. They are strategy. They are soul work. They are how you break cycles and build new blueprints. They are how you shift from being a prisoner of your past to a partner with your purpose. They are how you align with the vision heaven has for you, even when your circumstances haven't caught up yet. And you don't need anyone else's permission to begin. You don't need applause. You don't need proof. You just need a moment. A moment to say, this is what I'm speaking over myself today, no matter what. A moment to stand in front of your reflection and call yourself whole. A moment to breathe in grace and breathe out fear. A moment to speak even if you don't fully believe it yet. Because every word of truth you speak is laying a brick in the foundation of your peace. And over time, that peace becomes a fortress, a place where your confidence lives, a place where your heart can finally rest, a place where your spirit can stretch out and say, I am home, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is aligned. And that alignment, it begins with your words. There's something holy about learning how to rest in your own spirit. Not the kind of rest that comes from escaping or avoiding, but the kind of rest that says, I trust that I don't have to strive to be valuable. That kind of peace isn't something the world can give you, and that's why the world can't take it away. It's not in the hands of your job title, your relationship status, your bank account, or even your productivity. It's rooted in a stillness that says, I am enough even when I am not doing anything impressive. Because confidence is loud when needed, but peace is steady. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just walks in and fills the room. Peace is that quiet voice inside that tells you, you don't have to rush. You're not behind. You're right on time. But how do you find peace when your mind is always racing? How do you stay grounded when anxiety knocks louder than your fate? You come back home to yourself. You start creating a rhythm, a sacred ritual of returning to your breath, returning to your truth, returning to that gentle place inside where you don't have to prove anything. You begin talking to yourself the way you would to someone you love. You stop being your own enemy. You stop tearing yourself down in the silence. You stop treating your inner world like a battlefield and begin treating it like a sanctuary. We live in a world that praises hustle but punishes stillness. If you're not grinding, if you're not building, if you're not pushing, then what are you even doing? That's the lie. That's the trap. Because striving without inner peace only leads to burnout. But when you operate from rest, you make better decisions. You say no with clarity. You say yes with alignment. You don't grasp, you flow. You trust. And that's a different kind of power. That's the kind of power that says, I don't have to chase anything that was always meant for me. So many of us have learned to perform peace instead of possess it. We smile when we're falling apart. We say I'm fine when we're anything but. And the truth is, performing peace will exhaust you faster than pain ever will. Because now you're not just carrying the weight, you're hiding it. But what if you could give yourself permission to stop pretending? What if you could be honest and still be whole? Because peace doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean nothing ever goes wrong. It means you've created a safe space inside where you don't have to collapse every time life shakes. And that space, it's cultivated in the moments no one sees. It's built in the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. It's formed in how you show yourself grace when you miss a goal. It's strengthened every time you choose compassion over criticism. When you stop spiraling in shame and start anchoring in truth, that's when real peace begins to bloom. Not because life got easier, but because your foundation got stronger. Peace also means not allowing every voice access to your spirit. It means guarding your gates, your ears, your eyes, your mind. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every opinion is worth your energy. You have to start being intentional about what you consume and who you allow to speak into your atmosphere. Because some voices feed your fear while others feel your faith. And if you don't learn how to discern the difference, you'll spend your life reacting instead of responding. But when peace is present, you don't have to react to everything. You can breathe, you can pause, you can respond with wisdom instead of panic. There is strength in quiet confidence. You don't have to prove your worth with every move. You don't have to broadcast your every step. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep building in silence, trusting that what's yours is already on the way. Peace allows you to stop competing. It silences comparison. It makes room for joy even when things don't go your way. Peace reminds you that your value was never tied to the outcome. You are enough because you exist, not because of what you achieve. So start creating small moments of stillness in your day. Speak kindly to yourself in those moments. Let your body exhale. Let your heart be held. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is take a nap. Drink some water. Go for a walk. Let yourself rest without guilt. We've been taught to associate rest with laziness, but in truth, rest is revolutionary. Rest says, I trust the timing of my life. Rest says, I believe in my own enoughness. Rest says, I can pause and still be powerful. And when you live like that, anxiety starts losing its grip. You stop measuring your days by how much you accomplished and start measuring them by how deeply you connected with yourself, with peace, with purpose. Peace is also found in boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself, setting limits on how much you give, how much you carry, how much pressure you apply to your own back. It's okay to say, that's enough for today. It's okay to say, this doesn't align with who I am becoming. Those aren't signs of weakness, they're signs of wisdom. When you start honoring your limits, your life starts aligning with the truth. And that truth is where your peace lives. Confidence and peace work together. Confidence says, I know who I am. Peace says, and I'm okay being her. No matter what happens, confidence walks boldly. Peace stands firmly. Confidence says yes with fire. Peace says no with grace. They balance each other, and when you nurture both, you move through the world differently. Not in fear, not in desperation, but in alignment, in trust, in rhythm with something greater than yourself. You don't have to earn peace. You return to it. It's always been there, waiting underneath the noise, underneath the pressure, underneath the proving. It's in the quiet knowing, the sacred stillness. That space within where you remember who you are. Not what they said about you, not what you feared, not what you lost, but the core of you that has always been whole, always been love, always been enough. That's the kind of peace that transforms everything. Not because everything around you changed, but because everything within you did. There's something so powerful about knowing how to hold space for your past without letting it hijack your present. Healing doesn't mean erasing what happened. It means learning how to talk to the version of you who went through it and letting her know she's no longer alone. Because you can't always silence the echoes of old wounds, but you can change the way you respond to them. You can recognize when the voice of fear is really a memory resurfacing, trying to protect you. You can pause and ask yourself, is this my present truth or an old story I've carried for too long? That's how healing begins, by recognizing that just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it deserves authority in your life. When we stop being afraid of our thoughts and start getting curious about them, we begin to reclaim our power. You can sit with a thought and not let it define you. You can feel the fear, the insecurity, the doubt, and still choose peace. That choice over and over again is how confidence is formed. Not because the fear disappeared, but because you got stronger at recognizing that it doesn't get to drive. You can let it ride in the car, but it doesn't get to touch the wheel. That kind of internal awareness shifts everything, because when you know the difference between a passing thought and a permanent truth, you stop letting temporary feelings create lasting damage. Self-awareness is not about criticizing yourself. It's about compassion. It's about saying, I see what's happening within me, and I choose to respond with love instead of judgment. You don't have to shame yourself for having negative thoughts. You're human. Thoughts come and go, like weather passing through the sky. Some are sunny, some are stormy. Some catch you off guard, but none of them define the sky. And you, beloved, are the sky, vast, constant, capable of holding it all. That's the beauty of inner awareness. It gives you space to feel, to reflect, to redirect, not from pressure, but from presence. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is ask yourself, why did I just think that, and listen without shame. Maybe that thought came from something someone said to you years ago. Maybe it came from a moment you were overlooked or hurt. Maybe it came from fear of repeating the same mistakes. And instead of judging yourself, you get to comfort yourself. You get to say, I know where that came from, but I don't have to live there anymore. That moment of recognition becomes a pivot point. That's where transformation begins, not in pretending you're healed, but in being present with where you are and choosing growth. Confidence thrives in awareness, because once you know the triggers that dim your light, you also know how to protect your peace. Once you know the voices that sound like truth but are rooted in trauma, you can start replacing them with gentleness. You can begin interrupting the cycles that have kept you small. That might look like catching yourself when you say, "I'll always mess things up," and instead saying, "That's not true," and learning and growing. It might mean stopping mid-thought and saying out loud, "I choose to see this differently." Those small shifts add up. That's how your inner world starts matching your outer progress. Because what good is external success if you're still doubting yourself in silence? What good is a breakthrough if you're still being bullied by your own thoughts? That's why this work matters. That's why awareness is just a mindset. It's a ministry. It's sacred work to tend to your inner garden, to pull out the weeds of self-doubt, to plant seeds of truth, to water your confidence with kindness. You don't need a loud voice to be confident. You need a clear one that knows how to speak life, even when life is messy. You also have to give yourself permission to outgrow the version of you who needed those old defense mechanisms, that version of you who had to stay silent to stay safe, that version who had to shrink to be accepted, that version who learned to expect the worst because the best always felt too far away. She was doing her best. She carried you here, and now you get to carry her forward with love, but not let her lead anymore. You get to remind her, we're safe now, we're seen now. We don't have to perform for love anymore. That's not denial. That's growth. That's healing. You may not control every thought that crosses your mind, but you absolutely control the ones you choose to entertain. And that power is freedom. The freedom to interrupt a spiral. The freedom to speak to your inner critic with authority. The freedom to say, I've come too far to let this lie steal my joy today. That doesn't mean you never get triggered. It means when you do, you recognize it faster and recover quicker. It means you treat your mental and emotional space with the same care you'd give to something sacred. Because it is.